The wind howled through the jagged peaks, carrying with it a chill that seemed older than the mountains themselves. At the heart of a narrow canyon, hidden behind layers of rock and shadow, a massive stone door lay half buried in centuries of dust and rubble. Etched across its surface were symbols that pulsed faintly, glowing like dying embers in the dark. Few dared approach this place, and fewer still believed the stories whispered by wandering travelers, tales of a creature locked away long before humans walked the lands. Inside, the air was thick, suffocating even to the hardiest of lungs. Time had not been kind to the cavern, but it had done nothing to weaken the presence within. Deep in the shadows, coiled in a nest of stone and twisted metal, the dragon lay. Its scales shimmered like molten metal under the faint glow of the glyphs, and its eyes, though closed, held a light that no darkness could truly conceal. Every breath it drew was a shuddering earthquake of power, a heartbeat that resonated against the walls, echoing through the corridors of stone like a warning. For centuries it had slept, or something like sleep. Its mind had wandered through endless corridors of memory and thought, remembering battles fought across stars, skies that burned with fire, and oceans that swallowed whole cities. But there had also been the chains. Heavy, unyielding, crafted from an alloy unknown to mortal hands. Each link was a prison in itself, forged not just from metal but from something that hummed with the essence of ancient magic. A power so absolute that the dragon, for all its might, had been reduced to waiting. And now, after countless centuries, something stirred. A tremor ran through the cavern, faint at first, then growing. The dragon's eyes snapped open, their golden glow filling the room. Light flickered over jagged stone as claws flexed, testing the bonds that had held it for so long. There was a thought, sharp and sudden, cutting through the fog of time: something comes. Outside, the storm broke, thunder echoing across the peaks. But inside the stone prison, the sound was different, softer, almost deliberate. Footsteps, human and uncertain, yet confident. The dragon's gaze shifted toward the faint illumination creeping through cracks in the stone. It could sense them, the intruder, mortal yet unafraid. A human had come, and in a moment, the dragon understood that the centuries of waiting were not over yet. The choice of freedom might finally arrive, and it would not come easily. The human stepped cautiously into the cavern, the flicker of torchlight catching on the ancient symbols. The air smelled of smoke, metal, and sweat, carrying a warmth the dragon had not known in ages. This was no ordinary trespasser. The way the human moved, hands steady on a hammer at the belt, spoke of skill, determination, and a strange kind of bravery. The dragon's mind, sharp and ancient, catalogued the intruder's movements, noting the careful balance of caution and confidence. For a moment, time itself seemed to stretch, thick and heavy, as if the world were holding its breath. The dragon flexed its wings slightly, even though the space was too small for them to fully unfold. Every muscle tensed, every scale gleamed as it weighed the human, the centuries of captivity, and the possibility of what was to come. It had not expected a mortal to arrive here, not after all the ages. Yet somehow, this one had. Then the first spark flew. A small piece of stone dislodged by the human's careful steps, tumbling across the floor. The sound was a trigger. The dragon's voice, low and resonant, rumbled through the cavern like distant thunder: "Who dares enter my prison?" The human froze. Their eyes widened, but their hand did not leave the hammer. I come to help," they said, voice steady but carrying a trace of awe. "I can free you." The dragon's gaze narrowed. It had heard promises before, from those far less capable, far less worthy. Yet in the faint glimmer of this human's eyes, there was something different, a spark of something neither fear nor greed, but intent. The dragon studied them, inhaling the air that smelled of molten iron and determination, and for the first time in centuries, it felt a ripple of curiosity stir within the ancient beast. The chains rattled softly as if sensing the shift in the cavern. The dragon's claws scraped against stone, the echo a reminder of the centuries spent in confinement. It had waited for liberation, yes, but it had also waited for the one who might deserve it. And perhaps, just perhaps, this human might be that one. For the first time in centuries, the dragon did not roar. Instead, it watched. It waited. And the world outside, unaware of the awakening within the canyon, continued as if nothing had changed. But the dragon knew. Everything was about to change. The human's boots crunched against loose stone, each step deliberate, echoing through the cavern like distant thunder. The torch in their hand flickered, casting shadows that danced across walls etched with alien symbols, carvings older than any memory of man. The air was thick, heavy with a weight that seemed to press on the chest, yet the human pressed forward, eyes fixed on the massive stone figure coiled in the darkness ahead. The dragon shifted slightly, the chains rattling with a metallic groan. Every movement, no matter how slight, sent a ripple of tension through the cavern. Its gaze, ancient and all-seeing, tracked the human's progress, noting the rhythm of their steps, the way they adjusted their grip on the hammer, the steady calm in a place where fear would have been the natural response. This mortal was not ordinary. Not by any measure the dragon had known in centuries. A gust of wind howled through the canyon outside, making the torch flare wildly. The human flinched for a heartbeat but did not retreat. Instead, they leaned closer to the wall, examining the symbols, tracing their edges with a cautious finger. Sparks of curiosity danced in their eyes, and for a moment, the dragon allowed itself a faint amusement. Mortal confidence, so fragile, yet so intoxicating. "You feel it, don't you?" the human whispered, almost to themselves. "The weight, the power, trapped here all this time." The dragon's nostrils flared. How could a mortal perceive such things? Yet this one did, sensing not just the presence of the chains, but the immense force restrained within them. The dragon's ancient mind, capable of calculating centuries in moments, weighed the human carefully. Each decision, each hesitation, each spark of determination, it all told a story. And this story was unlike any it had encountered. "Who are you to think you can enter here?" the dragon's voice rumbled, low and vibrating the walls themselves. "Why should I allow a mortal to trespass in the sanctuary of my imprisonment?" The human froze. The hammer in their hand felt suddenly heavier, the torchlight flickering across sweat-streaked skin. But after a heartbeat, their grip tightened. "I am no thief. I seek no power for myself," they said, voice calm, steady. "I only wish to help you, to free you." A low growl echoed through the cavern, deep and resonant, as the dragon considered the mortal's words. So many had promised freedom, yet all had failed. All had crumbled under the weight of fear or greed. And yet this one moved differently. Their steps were measured, careful. Their hands, though human and fragile, bore the confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime mastering metal, fire, and force. The dragon flexed its claws against the stone floor, sending tiny shards skittering across the cavern. Every movement spoke of restrained power, centuries of strength compressed into a body bound by chains. The mortal, sensing the subtle shift, did not retreat. Instead, they took another step forward, eyes wide but unwavering. "You've waited long enough," the human whispered, almost reverently, "and the world outside is not ready for your wrath. Let me be the one to open the chains. To give you a choice that no one else could." The dragon's gaze narrowed. There was something in the human's tone, a quiet certainty that went beyond mortal understanding. It spoke not of fearlessness, but of intent. A choice had been presented, a rare, precious thing in the dragon's existence. The chains had bound it, yes, but it had also waited, for this moment, for the one who might be capable of offering freedom without asking for dominion. The cavern seemed to hold its breath. Time slowed as the dragon's massive head lowered slightly, nostrils flaring to scent the air around the human. Sparks of light reflected off scales like molten gold, illuminating the mortal's determined face. The chains rattled again, almost in anticipation, the metal singing with tension as if sensing the possibility of release. Then the human knelt, setting down the torch carefully, and examined the first of the chains. Their hands, small and mortal yet steady, traced the intricate runes carved into the metal. They murmured under their breath, words of skill, of crafting, of forging and unmaking. The dragon watched, silent but alert, as if measuring whether this fragile being could truly affect what no other had for centuries. A faint, almost imperceptible shiver ran through the chains, the metallic links vibrating with a hum of potential energy. The dragon's mind, ancient and calculating, realized something it had not allowed itself to hope for in centuries: this mortal might succeed. The human looked up, eyes meeting the dragon's golden gaze. There was no fear. No hesitation. Only a promise, a mortal promise to do what no one else could. And in that instant, the dragon understood, the age of waiting was ending. Something ancient, powerful, and dangerous was about to be set free. And the one who would guide that freedom forward was not a god, not a king, not a warrior, but a human. The cavern trembled softly, as though the world itself acknowledged the shift. The dragon exhaled, a slow plume of heat and smoke curling toward the ceiling. The chains rattled again, and for the first time in centuries, the dragon allowed itself to imagine liberation. And the human, hammer at the ready, took another step forward. The human smith crouched before the first of the dragon's chains, eyes scanning the intricate etchings that ran along its length. Symbols hummed faintly, alive with a power that had no name in any human tongue. The metal was unlike anything forged by mortal hands, cold and unyielding, yet vibrating with an energy that seemed almost sentient. The dragon's golden eyes never left the human, watching every movement with an intensity that could burn through stone. For a heartbeat, the smith paused, hammer resting lightly on the shoulder. The air was thick with anticipation, charged as if the cavern itself were holding its breath. Then, with careful precision, the hammer rose and struck the metal. A ringing sound echoed, harsh and pure, and sparks leapt like tiny stars, scattering across the floor. The dragon's tail lashed, a slow, deliberate warning, but the smith did not flinch. Each strike, the smith muttered under their breath, must speak the truth, must honor the balance. The dragon's eyes narrowed. Words. Humans had used words to deceive, to bargain, to fight. But this one spoke differently. There was reverence in them, an understanding that the chains were more than mere metal. They were a prison and a promise, a challenge and a key. Another strike, and the metal shivered. A faint glow traced along the links, responding to the rhythm of the hammer. The dragon's massive head tilted, nostrils flaring, inhaling the scent of molten metal, sweat, and determination. Centuries of imprisonment had taught it patience, but curiosity, long dormant, stirred like a flickering flame. "You've waited long enough," the human whispered, voice steady despite the heat radiating from the chain. "I don't know what you'll do when you're free, but I won't falter. I won't fail." The dragon let out a low rumble, almost contemplative. It had waited for ages, watching mortals rise and fall, kings and warriors, heroes and fools. None had possessed the skill or the courage to approach the chains, let alone attempt to unlock them. This human was different. Strike after strike, sparks flew, illuminating the cavern in bursts of golden light. Shadows danced along the walls, and the air seemed to vibrate with a resonance that reached deep into the dragon's chest. The chains creaked under the invisible pressure, yet they did not yield. The dragon's wings twitched, confined but itching to unfurl, to test the freedom that had been promised but not yet realized. Hours, or was it days, passed. Time had lost its meaning in the cavern. The smith's hammer rang with precision, each blow deliberate, each pause intentional. Sweat streaked the human's face, hair damp and clinging, but their eyes remained fixed on the metal, scanning for the tiniest sign of weakness, the smallest clue hidden in the runes. The dragon shifted, moving closer to the chains. Its claws scraped stone, sending tiny shards tumbling. Sparks from the hammer flickered across the scales, casting molten reflections onto the cavern walls. The dragon's breath came in slow, deliberate gusts, hot enough to steam the floor, yet careful not to disrupt the smith's work. The old beast understood instinctively. This human must do the forging, must choose the rhythm of freedom. A louder strike resounded, and the chain shivered violently. A pulse of light ran through the metal, and the cavern seemed to thrum in response. The dragon's heart, immense and ancient, beat faster. It had felt centuries of magic, of bindings, of forces designed to hold it against the universe itself. But the energy in this mortal's hammer, it resonated with something new. Something it had almost forgotten, hope. Almost there, the human murmured, sweat dripping into their eyes. "Just a little more. We're close." The dragon's wings stretched slightly, careful not to break the fragile balance, and it leaned closer to the smith. Every muscle coiled with restrained power, scales brushing against the stone floor with a metallic rasp. The chains rattled in response, alive with anticipation. The dragon sensed it now, freedom was within reach, but it depended on trust, on precision, on the courage of a single mortal hand. Another strike. Sparks leapt, clashing with the faint glow of the runes. The metal began to hum, a low vibration that reverberated through the cavern, through the dragon's bones, through the very floor beneath them. The chains were listening. The dragon was listening. The smith, with hammer poised, listened to them both. Forged in fire and will, the human whispered, lips trembling, voice strong despite exhaustion. "I honor you. I honor what you are. And I will not fail." A pulse of energy surged from the hammer into the chain. A single link glowed bright white, then faded to gold. The dragon exhaled slowly, smoke curling from its nostrils. The first small crack had appeared, a fracture in the centuries-old prison. The cavern trembled, and the dragon's eyes gleamed with a dangerous curiosity. It understood now, the mortal's forging was more than metalwork. It was a bridge between worlds. The dragon, chained for centuries, felt the faintest flicker of freedom, and it was beautiful, terrifying, and fragile all at once. The smith wiped their brow, inhaling deeply, and raised the hammer once more. The moment had come. Every strike before had been preparation. Every spark, every hum of the metal, every careful breath had led to this. One final, precise strike could shatter the first barrier entirely. The dragon leaned closer, scales brushing the stone, its golden eyes locked on the human's face. The hammer fell. And the chains shuddered. The cavern shuddered with the force of the last strike, a deep vibration that rattled stone and metal alike. Sparks danced along the cracked links of the dragon's chains, running like veins of molten light through the ancient metal. The dragon's eyes, golden and unblinking, fixed on the human smith. Every heartbeat, every breath, was a measure of the tension between two worlds, one mortal, one immortal. The first link had given way. A sharp crack echoed through the cavern, louder than thunder, and the chain trembled like a living thing. The dragon's wings twitched involuntarily, brushing the stone walls in a confined, cautious stretch. For the first time in centuries, it sensed not just the possibility of freedom, but the imminence of it. You could really do it, the dragon rumbled, voice low and resonant, vibrating against the cavern walls. You could undo what centuries of power and magic have enforced. The human did not respond immediately. Sweat streaked their face, hair plastered against their brow. They studied the broken link carefully, tracing the fracture with fingers scorched by the sparks. The hammer hung ready, muscles tensed for another strike, eyes calculating the exact rhythm needed. "I'm not here to hurt you," the human said, voice calm. "I only want to give you a choice. Freedom isn't mine to grant, it's yours to take." The dragon shifted, claws scraping the floor. Every movement sent tremors echoing across the cavern. It had known captivity for centuries, bound by chains that carried not just metal but the weight of cosmic judgment. And yet here was a human, small, fragile, but fearless, offering a bridge to liberation. "Why?" the dragon asked, ancient words reverberating in the air. "Why would a mortal risk life and limb for one such as I?" The smith straightened slightly, hammer poised. "Because I know what it means to be trapped. Not by chains of metal, but by time, by fear, by fate. You deserve freedom. I can't take it from you, but I can help you claim it." For a long moment, silence filled the cavern. Even the faint hum of the broken chain seemed to pause, waiting. The dragon's mind, a labyrinth of memory and strategy, weighed the mortal's words against every caution it had learned over centuries. Trust was foreign, dangerous. A wrong move could end not just the human, but the dragon itself, for the lingering enchantments tied the chains to the balance of power around them. Slowly, the dragon flexed its neck, lowering its head closer to the human. The air between them crackled with raw tension, a fragile bridge between fear and hope. The chains rattled again, impatient, alive, aware that a choice hung in the balance. "You will not fail me, will you?" the dragon asked, its voice almost a whisper but carrying the weight of ages. The human met the gaze without hesitation. "I will not," they said. "But you must choose as well. I can guide the hammer, I can follow the runes, but only you can accept this freedom. It's yours, not mine." The dragon exhaled slowly, heat curling through the air, smoke drifting toward the cavern ceiling. Every instinct screamed caution. Every ancient memory warned against trust. And yet, there was something about this mortal that sparked a long-buried flicker of hope. Something that whispered that perhaps the world could still hold wonder, even for a being as old and powerful as itself. A deep rumble rolled through the dragon's chest. Claws scraped the stone, sending shards scattering. The chains rattled more violently now, sensing the shift in intent. This was no longer just metal and magic, it was a test, a ritual older than memory, but never before attempted by a human hand. Slowly, deliberately, the dragon extended a claw, massive and scaled, hovering just above the smith's shoulder. The human did not flinch. They inhaled, lifted the hammer, and prepared for the strike that could shatter the final barriers. But before it fell, the dragon spoke again. "Know this," it said, voice deep and vibrating, "once these chains are broken, there is no turning back. Your world, my world, both will change. Can you bear that?" "I can," the human replied without hesitation. "Because some things are worth the risk. Because freedom deserves a chance." The dragon's eyes glowed brighter, golden light reflecting in the faint shimmer of sparks from the chains. Slowly, with centuries of hesitation melting away in a single moment of trust, it nodded. Not fully, not without caution, but enough to signal acceptance. The human exhaled and brought the hammer down. Sparks erupted, arcs of molten light leaping across the cavern. The chains shivered violently, glowing brighter with each strike. The cavern vibrated, echoing with the sound of metal straining against destiny itself. The dragon flexed its wings fully this time, pressing against the walls, feeling the weight of centuries begin to lift. The chains rattled and groaned, their magic straining, the very air humming with the energy of unbound power. The human's hammer struck again, precise, deliberate, and with one final, resounding blow, the last barrier cracked. A blinding pulse of light filled the cavern. The dragon roared, a sound that shook the stone, a roar of liberation, of centuries spent waiting finally reaching its climax. And then, silence. The dragon's gaze fell upon the human, golden eyes gleaming not with hunger or wrath, but recognition. A debt had been acknowledged. A choice had been made. Freedom was no longer a dream, it was a reality. The human, breathing heavily, stepped back. Sparks fell from the fractured chains, clattering harmlessly onto the stone floor. For the first time, the dragon stood unbound, massive wings stretching into the cavern, casting shadows like mountains themselves. "You have earned it," the dragon said, voice softer now, almost reverent. "And with it, a debt you may not yet understand." The smith met its gaze. "I only wanted to see you free." The dragon lowered its head slowly, eyes locking onto the humans with a weight that carried centuries. "Then let the world bear witness to what mortals and immortals can accomplish together." And in that moment, the chains that had held a creature older than time itself lay in shattered heaps, the dragon finally unbound, its debt and freedom intertwined with the mortal who had dared to forge destiny itself. The cavern was silent, save for the faint crackle of sparks drifting from the shattered chains. Light reflected off the dragon's scales, casting molten gold shadows that danced across the walls like living fire. 4 centuries, the dragon had waited, imprisoned by chains no mortal or god had broken, yet here it stood, free at last, massive wings stretching to brush the cavern ceiling, each movement radiating raw, untamed power. The human smith stepped back, heart pounding, sweat streaking their face, hands still gripping the hammer. Their eyes swept over the colossal figure before them, the scales shimmering like molten metal, the eyes golden and knowing, alive with centuries of memory and intelligence. Fear should have gripped them, but it did not. Instead, there was awe. Reverent, terrifying, and beautiful awe. "You have done what no one else could," the dragon said, voice deep and resonant, vibrating through the stone floor beneath them. "You have forged not just metal, but destiny itself." The human swallowed hard, trying to find words, but the sheer presence of the dragon seemed to make speech fragile and small. I only wanted to see you free," they admitted. "To give you a choice you deserved." The dragon lowered its massive head until its eyes were level with the humans. For a long moment, it simply regarded them, every ancient thought weighing the mortal's worth, every century of pain measuring the value of this single act of courage. And then, a flicker of something almost human appeared in the dragon's gaze: acknowledgement. Respect. Recognition. "Freedom carries a price," the dragon said, voice like a distant storm. "And debts must be honored. You have given me mine." And in return, its talon extended, massive, tipped with claws that could slice stone like paper, and yet it paused, hovering just above the ground. "You shall have mine, should you ever call upon it." The human blinked. "My debt." The dragon's gaze softened slightly. "Not yours to bear willingly. But you have saved me from a prison that was not meant for a mortal lifespan. The debt is mine. I owe you my life, my protection, and the consequences of my freedom. Whatever comes, mortal, I am bound to honor it." Outside, the winds howled through the canyon as if acknowledging the shift in the world. The storm had returned, lightning arcing across the peaks, thunder rolling like the beat of an ancient drum. Yet within the cavern, the atmosphere was charged with something far older than any tempest: promise. The dragon's chains were gone, but a new bond had formed, invisible yet unbreakable, linking the mortal and the immortal in a pact beyond time. The human's voice trembled slightly, half in awe, half in fear. I don't know what that means for me, for the world." The dragon tilted its massive head, considering the statement. "It means the world will change. Because once I am free, the balance of power shifts. Empires will tremble, armies will falter, and the skies will belong to me once more. But know this, mortal, no harm shall come to you. I have promised it. And a promise from a being older than the stars is not given lightly." The smith exhaled, relief mingling with lingering tension. Every strike, every spark, every moment of fear and courage had led to this. For the first time, they allowed themselves a small smile. "Then, let the world see it. Let it bear witness." The dragon's wings unfurled fully, stretching wide enough to blot out the cavern ceiling, scales shimmering in molten gold and bronze. Heat rolled off its body in waves, thick and tangible, yet the human did not retreat. The dragon lowered its head to brush gently against the smith's shoulder, a gesture of acknowledgement, of trust, of shared victory. "You have given me life," the dragon said, voice soft now, almost contemplative. "And in return, you shall have my vigilance. My power. My debt is eternal." The human's gaze met the dragon's, steady and unwavering. "Then we face it together." Outside, the storm broke fully, lightning slicing the sky. Inside, in the cavern, the dragon stretched its wings, testing freedom for the first time, and the human watched, heart pounding, knowing that history had shifted. The chains that had bound the alien dragon for centuries were gone. Its wrath, its power, and its fury were unbound. But now, tempered by a single mortal's courage and a debt that could never be forgotten. The world beyond the canyon would never be the same. And in the eye of the storm, one human and one alien dragon stood together, bound not by chains, but by choice, by trust, and by a debt that would echo through eternity. The dragon exhaled, a plume of fire and smoke curling toward the cavern's mouth, and roared, a sound that shook mountains, split clouds, and announced to the world that it had returned. The human raised a hand, hammer at their side, and for the first time, they felt that all was more than fear. It was a promise. The debt had been paid. Freedom had been earned. And together, mortal and dragon stepped into a future no one could have imagined.